Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Photography Live and Uncut. I've got a great guest today. It's Matt Hart, ex-Fuji photographer. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hi, Paul. How are you?
Yes, very well, thank you. Thanks so much for joining me, Matt. It's been a long time coming, but we got there in the end.
I know. It's been, what, 2 or 3 years, probably. I don't even know.
I think it's around about 2 years trying to organise this one, but You know, better late than never, as I always say.
I'm always busy at Christmas anyway, delivering presents, so.
Well, exactly. You forgot your hat.
Yeah, I know. You're lucky I nearly did
Yeah.
it.
Just a quick plug on my part. I'm just going to go to screen share very quickly. I'm in the process. I've got in touch and linked up with a photographer, Roberto Aguilar, and we're going to be doing a workshop on the 11th of February. It's going to be at his studio in Battersea Park. All the details are there on Meetup. If you go to Meetup stroke Streetwise, you'll see the workshop, and all the details are there for you. It's going to be a fantastic workshop. He specializes in fashion, lifestyle, and urban photography. So looking forward to doing that with him. And I hope anyone who's watching the show and lives in the UK, or maybe visiting the UK on holiday and it clashes with that particular day, why not sign up for it? You'll have a great full day's activity with Roberto. So that's just the short plug there for that. Back to Matt. Thanks so much for letting me do that, Matt.
It's okay. Never heard of Meetup, so it's all quite interesting.
Yeah, Meetup is it's a good little site. We're going to see how it goes with Meetup, and fingers crossed it's going to work. But otherwise, I know we were talking about Eventbrite earlier on, which may be something I'll have to consider in the future.
It is good. I think Eventbrite's worldwide, isn't it? I don't know how far Meetup goes. So I think because of that sort of stretch which Eventbrite has got, it's probably the one which I've got to consider more, especially if people are visiting the UK and want to tie in a holiday with a little bit of a workshop setup. You know, be a good thing to do. Definitely.
Just to let my audience know as well, we've got some viewers already. Welcome to the show, everyone. If we do have an internet connection cut for any particular reason, I'll do my level best to get back on site. And if that does happen, go straight back to the Facebook page and wait for me to upload the link. Fingers crossed it won't happen. But if it does, it's out of our control, and we'll do our level best to get it back on. If not, I'll just have to reschedule another show with Matt when he's not so busy.
See you in 4 years.
Yeah. So, see you in year 2020.
2020, yeah.
There's a song there somewhere. Anyway, let's get back to you, Matt. So I love this first question that I dreamt up. What was the first camera you can remember in your household when you were just a young kid?
I haven't got a clue. Don't know. I've always been asked that, and I actually don't know what it was. All I remember is silver. There's actually some pictures of it hanging around my dad's neck before he gave it to me. Right. But because they're on old film and everything else, you can't actually zoom in far enough to see what make it was. But it was an old 35mm silver camera in a leather case. That's all I can remember. So that was the first one ever. But the first named one was Zenit E. And then Zenit TTL. So I think we all had those, didn't we?
All had the Zenit E. That's the only one I could afford. It was an absolute brick,
the Russians
wasn't it?
make some. Yeah, Russians make some interesting cameras.
They did indeed. They did. And the one that I had was was it the Helios 55mm lens?
Oh yeah.
And you had to close the aperture down manually after you've done it. And how many times did I forget to do that?
Big learning curve.
It's huge. Yeah. Was photography always sort of an interest for you when you were younger?
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I was dyslexic as a kid, so I didn't excel at school. It turns out in the end I did okay, but I didn't excel at school, and I used to get quite a lot of grief for my laziness in reading and writing back in those days, because people didn't understand what dyslexia was. So the photography was somewhere to hide. I used to spend hours with a camera, and I used to spend hours outside with a camera in them days, because kids just went everywhere anyway and did whatever they liked. So
that's right.
I had a camera with me just about everywhere I went, and I photographed everything. I even used to, and there was no skill in choosing film or anything when I was a kid. It was just like scrounging what I could off every photo dealer, getting all the true print film and every single bit of film I could to take as many pictures as I could. And then it was time to save up and then try and get cheap deal somewhere or another to actually get it developed to see what I've done. So
yeah. And then you'd had to wait a couple of weeks. So you didn't? Did you get involved with darkroom
I did.
work at all?
Well, that was
later?
just it, because of the expense of developing and printing. That's why I got into black and white in the end, because I could get black and white film reasonably cheap, or even color film, to be honest with you. And then I was lucky enough to have a great big loft in our house at home, so built a darkroom in the loft. Well, built a studio and darkroom in the loft because it was completely blacked out. So one half of the loft was studio, one half was darkroom, and obviously there's water up there as well, so perfect.
That was ideal, wasn't it? If you don't mind me asking, how did you do about the drainage and stuff like that? Just shove a pipe out the wall or something? Out of the roof.
The pipe went out of the roof, down the wall, and into one of the, the collectors for the drains, and actually straight down the drain.
We didn't say that. Sorry.
It's a long time ago when we talked all sorts of things down the drain.
Those days it didn't matter, did it?
No.
That's a big cost now. Don't do that. Yeah, we didn't say that. Probably someone along the lines trying to nick all the silver, which is down the drain there somewhere.
Definitely.
Oh, dude, those were the days, weren't they? I only did black and white processing once at school. I was more of a sportsman at school, so I was out rugby, football, cricket in the summer. Big interest for myself, but I only did it once. And all the guys that I speak to now, yourself, Michael Kenner, obviously a huge printer himself. I wish I'd done more. At school in the black and white.
It teaches you. I think the interesting thing about the print process, not just about learning to print, but it also teaches you how to be more selective as well. Because back then, as a kid, when I was learning, buying, getting, as I say, film was cheap and developing wasn't too expensive, but actually paper and printing was a little bit more expensive for the chemicals and the paper. So one of the good parts of that was it makes you a damn sight more selective about what you would actually go to print in the end. So so that was great. You take, let's say you did 12 36 exposures, and you're only going to print 2 or 3, and and even to this day it's the same thing. I go out and shoot and I still only keep 2 or 3. So I think it's like that sort of discipline from back then.
So much to be learned from those good old days, as we say, using manual setup of a camera and learning exposure and light in the correct way, and pushing film and all that sort of stuff. So where are we now? What sort of age, if you don't mind me asking, would you be in this sort of part of your life where you're doing your darkroom work in your loft? Were you still at school?
I was still at school, I was a kid. I can't even remember. 12, 13, 14, around that sort of time.
And where did you get the education for that? Self-taught or
self-taught?
Did you...
Fantastic. It was by books, books by all sorts of different people back then. Michael Boys was one of my inspirations then for like glamour, which I did when I left school to a certain extent. But then it was just actually, ironically, the dyslexic person reading from books to learn how to do it. But it was more looking at the pictures and working it all out. So, then I was really lucky. There was a photography shop in Ashford, Middlesex, where I used to live. And then there was, when we moved to Kent, in Maidstone, there were some guys there that helped me out. And sort of when you go and buy paper, then they sort of interested of why someone's, I was a bit older then, but why someone's so young is so interested. And you get so much help from these guys, you know what I mean? And they'll even, let you in the studio, show how stuff works, and even bring you in the shop and show you developing and everything else. So it went from teaching myself to then learning off people in shops that wanted to help. Probably to sell me the chemicals, but
and the other thing you mentioned there, and this is the side of the industry, if you want to, which is really being decimated now, isn't it? There's very few and far between old camera shops like we used to know. We used to go in. Well, I remember my local one was just Pentax and Practica cameras.
There's hardly any. I mean, there's Cambrian over in North Wales. They still got, I don't know, they haven't got a dark room anymore, but they still sell all the chemicals and everything else. So that's the good thing about that is, and most of the modern camera shops are just places that sell digital cameras. And some of the people are just salespeople, and they haven't got a great knowledge of photography, I suppose. They can sell, so it's the older camera shops and the people that are actually taking the time to employ people that know something about the industry. I think they're worth their salt, and that's what I think people are sorting out these days. In fact, people have seemed to be moving away from the internet buying, from what I can see, and trying to go and seek out help and advice like I did as a kid, which I think is a good thing,
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I was in a local Jessops, you know, the company that took the dive but resurfaced again, and I did
Yeah,
notice there was a slight difference in attitude there. There was more sort of an openness and a prepared to help people rather than say, no, this is the camera you want, Nikon or Canon. It was sort of
I deal
along the
with
lines of help.
I deal with quite a few myself, and all the ones
Yeah,
I deal with are all the ones that I would recommend through like the Fujiholics and that, and they're all the
yeah,
ones that all the staff in the shops take the time to want to spend some time with you and talk to you and explain
exactly right.
things, and they've got photography knowledge, and you know that's really really important. I remember not mentioning any shops names, but I remember ringing a shop from when I moved up here, because I needed an adapter ring once, and I rung up and they didn't have a clue what I was talking about, and I thought I was
No,
just
exactly. Yeah,
wasting my time here, you know. So
yeah. I
yeah,
had a similar aspect when I went to someone say, "Do you sell slide film?" And the boy turned around and said, "What's that?"
yeah,
So there we go.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
similar sort of situation. So let's swing forward a little bit further. Let's get to know Matt Hart when he left school. Matt, did you get in straight into photography yourself there, trying to sort of make the roots that way?
Funny enough, yeah, straight away. Basically, I was actually taking photographs then for Tesco's. I know
Okay.
everyone hates the retailer, but I was actually working as a kid in the. I started off in the butchery department as a Saturday kid when I worked for money to buy film. So
Yeah.
I started off in the butchery department, and through that, I then started photographing meat in the butchery department to actually make the meat manuals for Tesco, so which they could then train other staff in other shops.
Right.
So I was
Okay.
actually part of the team that put the manuals together to actually train people in meat provisions and everything else. So part of the job then was producing manuals and photography. And you know, on film with different color lights inside buildings, it was a bit of a
Yeah.
learning curve, you know. So
Yeah.
yeah, as soon as I left school, or even while I was at school, the photography was earning me money at that stage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. And did we have a sort of a parting of the ways with photography for a period of time, or?
Oh, we did. I mean, I worked for the government for 11 years, but all the time I was working for the government, I actually was still doing photography.
Right.
And then when I finished that, I've done various different jobs over the years, anything that pays the bills. When I moved up to Liverpool, which was about 11 years ago, I even went and got a job in a dry cleaners as the man. Actually, I was the manager of the dry cleaners, but I did that because at the time I needed to make some money very, very quickly and
Yeah.
get a house sorted out. And so that's what I did, you know. But for all my life, so that's what 54 years coming up to next year, I've done photography in the background in line with the other jobs, but I've shot stock photography as well and I've made a lot of money out of stock photography in the past. I mean, those days have gone now, but you know,
Yeah.
there were times in stock photography that you could do 30,000 a year in stock. You know,
Wow.
the top guys, Yuri Akaris and all that, were doing 2 or 3 million a year in stock, and massive businessmen, you know. So the stock photography worked really, really well. Someone said to me years ago, you know, there's no point in having all these images sat around and all this imagery sat around not doing anything. You might as well make it work for you. So I did.
Yeah.
I don't do it anymore, and I don't even bother uploading anymore, to be honest with you. There's just not enough value in it.
Again, I heard this from one of my previous guests with regards to stock photography. He still does it. He said, but the money's not in it what it used to be. You know, I'm not picking up hardly 50% of what I used to do before.
I think I've just last year. I don't know. A couple of thousand. That. You know, maybe a few thousand. That's all I did last year. Whereas waste of time.
And from your sorry to interrupt you, but from your from your stock photography, what type of work is that which is going into the stock libraries?
Oh, quite boring. It's actually, to make money out of stock, you've got to shoot a lot of images. So that could be walking down the road, and it could just be a glove on the floor or something that you looks interesting, but nothing, you know, nothing with a Nike or Adidas or any logos or anything in it.
Right. Okay.
It's just something. I will tell you because it's funny, but 2 of the best-selling images I've got are actually just a pot, a hot pot. What's it called? I can't remember what it's called now. Slow cooker.
Right with you.
With various different dishes in it. So every evening you make something like scouse, or you make a different stew, photograph it, sell it for stock. Every winter that sells over and over again. But the best-selling image of all time, which has sold 40,000 times, I think it is a cockerel. So you could actually say my cock's my best-selling image.
This is a family show. Keep it on the level. Funny. 30,000 times.
I think it's 38,000 times it's sold. Yeah.
30,000 times your cocks come to the fore. Good on you.
Yeah.
Well done. let's talk about present day, because you're well known now in the UK for your street photography.
Yeah.
Street photography is, I get the impression when you're saying as a young kid, you're out there photographing all the time. Dare I say that if they cut you open, it'd be street photography written through like a stick of rock?
Yeah. Yeah, unfortunately. No, but fortunately, it's I think the strangest thing, I've done every genre of photography there is, from landscape to wildlife, and, you know, load of studio work shooting for other people and product stuff for other people. But in my own spare time, in my own free time in the past, I can get out and shoot street. And it, you know, most of my life I've lived in cities. So you can walk out the door, walk down the road and shoot people, so to speak.
Yeah.
Some people would like to shoot. No, it's you can shoot people.
Yeah.
And some things you can't do. Landscapes, you know, it's for most people, they've got an idea in their head of where they want to be at the weekend for an amazing landscape, and unfortunately that weekend the weather's not exactly the best for
No,
them.
exactly right.
But
yeah.
Street photography, you can shoot in any weather, really. I mean, obviously you want that beautiful light to make it perfect, but you don't have to have that beautiful light. And it's amazing just to be able to walk out your front door and go for a walk. I mean, I still, obviously I'd still do it now, because it come from a hobby to actually a profession, street photography. That's right. Now. So in the past it was my hobby, so it'd be, you know, especially if you've had a really stressful day and you had a bit of time off, you can go out and do it. Or a lunch hour, even at, you know, whatever you're doing, you can spend a lunch hour out taking photographs of people. And, you know, sometimes you looked out the window in the morning and the light's absolutely perfect, and it's just a matter of just stop what you're doing, get out there and go and do something.
Just go and do it. Yeah, exactly right. Yeah. Interesting enough, we'll talk about cameras shortly after this. We're going to do the screen share. We're going to have to look at your work, but really the classic example is anyone to get out there and shoot. They don't necessarily have to have, you know, the iPhone or the smartphone is an ideal tool to have in your pocket where you can take some great images, can't you?
Of course you can. It's a little bit more difficult. You can do, when everything's static, you can use iPhones, but when you've got people moving around and people moving towards you, they're not really fast enough always to capture movement. But most of the time, if there's people reasonably stationary and there's reasonable amount of light on them, you're going to get a good image. Yeah. But I've got quite a few. I've got some interesting images with the iPhone. I actually don't know whether on the site we're going to look at, but I've actually got some iPhone shots that I've shot. There was one guy in a train station. It just so happens I'd just been shooting for 3 days, and I was in crew at a train station. And I was actually on my way to the loo, and I was looking through the station. And there's this guy sitting at this table with his hat on and this long coat on, and what looked like 2 pints of beer in front of him. And I thought, oh my God, that's really good. I'm going to take a photograph now of my iPhone. Then after I've gone to the loo and got back, I'll grab my camera out of the bag. If he's still there, I'm going to go back and shoot him again. It'd gone. It just got up and gone, you know. So that's the only chance you're ever going to have, and I'm just lucky I have my phone in my pocket. So
yeah, that's right.
You've always got a camera with you these days, haven't you? As long
that's
as
very true. Very true. Let's go to screen share. Let's have a look at some of your work, and it's well, quite honest with you, it's out the top slot. Out the top slot. What I'm going to try and do, just going to expand my window a little bit here, so we get a full screen for everyone to look at. They've probably just gone a little bit smaller. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to flick through the images, Matt. And if it turns out there is a particular image that there is a storyline, just tell me to stop, and I'll
no problem.
And I'll go back. But I think one thing that comes across to me straight away is your fantastic use of light, the lovely contrast images that you create. Now, initially, you weren't a Fuji user. You were a Nikon user, or as they say over the pond, Nikon user.
Yep.
What camera were you using when you were? I'm assuming that's digital camera with the Nikon at the later stages. What camera were you using then?
Well, I started off with Nikon FM2. Had Nikon FM2 for 20 odd 30 years. I've still got it now. I used to have two. But then digital wise, I started with the Nikon D200. Then went to Nikon D300, which happened to have a Fuji sensor in it. And then moved on then, and I had a pair of Nikon D3Ss with all pro glass.
And how did you find using in particular the 3S? How did you find using that on the street? Did you find it
a nightmare?
Yeah.
The trouble is with the D3S as well is everyone knows it as a pro body. So when you're walking down the road, huge, great thing. I mean, and everyone looks at it. And that's sort of how the journey almost started, to start looking for something else with doing street, because it was just too big for getting out there and shooting street with, everyone looks at it and sees it as a pro camera and wonder what you're doing, think you're a press photographer or something. And then
yeah, exactly right.
You get the normal people smiling at you and want their photograph taken, which is not what I want. Not shooting candid. So
even, I suppose, even with something like a nifty 50 on the front or something smaller, it is too big.
I actually went and got a D7000 before I started making the change to try and reduce the size, but it just doesn't work. Then you end up buying, I went back to a D200 actually.
Yeah.
To a D200 and then got a felt tip and started blacking out Nikon and putting black camera straps on and everything else. It's quite weird how even now, if you go out with a film camera, no one takes any notice of you.
Exactly right.
It's slightly weird. And
they do.
Same with the Fujis, all black bodies, little tiny cameras. No one even takes any notice of you. Just like a tourist. This is great.
No, I've had exactly the same. And funny enough, just recently, a present to myself, I bought myself a Yashica D, the TLR, and even going around that with taking street photography with that, people just don't bat an eyelid. They just think, well, he's a bit weird. Using an old box brownie, they probably think I've got. But so while we're flicking through these images here. So the old Nikon, that's a great shot. I love this one.
That's in Edinburgh. Perfect.
High summer collection. Love it.
I know. Just in fact, I walked past her a couple of times and then went back and saw her again. There's a lot of people think it's actually a guy. Some of the comments when I actually put it online were, it's a guy. And I thought it looks like that because it's black and white, but in color, it's pink shoes and pink nail varnish. So that's the bit of a giveaway. Really.
That's the giveaway, yeah.
And I saw her walking down the road. So
it's the posture of the lady that,
I know,
that gives it away to you thinking it is a man.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the Fuji love. When did you? And I know you wrote recently a very interesting blog on how this all came about. But just for the benefit of my viewers here, what happened?
Yeah, it was actually just looking for something smaller and easier to use, and I was just getting fed up with this. It sounds a cliche now because everyone says it that moves across, but it's true. I mean, I'm 54 next year, and standing at an event shooting with a pair of D3Ss on your shoulders with a 300mm lens and a 70-200 was absolutely, it wear out. My fingers and my hands were getting tired. I don't know if anyone's ever shot an event, they'll know. By the end of the event, by the time you get to, if say you started the event at like 8 o'clock in the morning and it's like 10, 11 o'clock at night and you've been carrying two cameras like that all day, even your shutter fingers worn out, your fingers are worn out, your shoulders are worn out. And then street photography was my hobby, and the biggest problem was my digital cameras were holding me back from my hobby as well. So I started to search, and initially I did look at everything else from Sony to everything else. And Sony at the time, I think it was the NEX1, or I don't know, something like that. They for all the reports, they made absolutely amazing cameras with amazing sensors, but the lenses weren't up to it.
That's right.
And I come up, I'm from the age when Sony used to make music systems, so it's like they didn't make cameras, and so I just couldn't find myself moving to a camera, even though I do know they make the sensors. So I had to look at everything from Sony to Olympus to everything, and it's just I just couldn't find anything. It's as simple as that. I think I got a X10, I think, off eBay, and then I read reports because I used to shoot stock that you could use the X100 for stock, but most of the write-ups on it weren't that very good at the time. So I got it and started using it. I didn't take much notice of it until I started processing the images. And once I started processing the images, I thought, well, these are pretty good. But it was only until one day I actually compared an image from the X100 as a file with a D3S image that I thought, hang on a minute, even cropped in, this is absolutely superior quality.
I know it is quite amazing. Because I'll tell you my little story very briefly about switching from Nikon to Fuji, because I went into, as we were talking earlier on, Jessup's had literally just folded, but they'd opened up a new shop in Birmingham and they're just starting up. And I asked them about the Fuji, and the guy said, come and have a look. And he gave me this XE1 and I started just taking shots around the shop as you do, and I said, so come on in, what's wrong with it? And I asked him straight, and he said, well, I've been using it, and I've been trying to find something wrong with it, and I cannot. And I said, do you know what the problem is? You guys don't have any photographs using this camera. And he said, oh yes, we do. We have a book. And he gave me this Fuji book, which were photographs using the XE1 and the Pro one. And that was it. As soon as I saw those photographs, I thought, well, this is a this is a nail on for me. And the selling of the Nikon equipment started literally the following day, which was quite a lot of gear.
Yeah, it was a big leap of faith for me. I mean, I was using the X100, and then I had, you know, the truth is I had a load of problems with my Nikon gear at the time, and I needed to get it serviced, and I'd had it serviced at one dealer, and then it come up to the following Christmas, and then it was time to get it done again, and I'd had a few faults, and I went over to, I think it was Cambrian Photography. I was on my way back to Liverpool to shoot a gig here, and I thought, do I get it all sorted out? And the cost's going to be several £1000s. What do I do? And there just happened to be an X Pro 1 in Sarah's shop in Cambrian. And so I thought, well, this is interesting. So I bought the X Pro 1 with a couple of lenses at the time. I think they were on a deal. And I took them to the event, and I used that camera to shoot the event. And when I got home, it actually changed the way I thought about photography. You know, instead of standing there with a D3S in the pit with a 300mm lens shooting the same as everybody else, I started shooting differently. In fact, I started shooting the way I did with a film camera, which I preferred, and my enjoyment straight away came back. You
made a very good statement in your blog. Actually, it brought back the love of photography to you.
It did bring back the love of photography,
and for me, it brought photography back to me. Period. Because of that usability that I enjoyed.
I think the weirdest thing about it is, though, the things that, this is a strange one that I hear a lot at the moment, and that is the love of moving to Fuji in the beginning, which is because it slowed you down. That infuriates people after they've used it for a while, and then they want to go faster again. And I get that. But the lucky thing for us is Fuji have done that. They've taken what was the X Pro 1 and the original X100, and now with the XT2, it's DSLR speed and focusing. So they, you know, in the 5 years that the X series has been going, 5 or 6 years, they've actually moved with the times, and they've listened to what everyone said, and they moved up. And you know, I took a leap of faith. I sold, you know, a lot of money's worth of Nikon equipment to move over to Fuji in a leap of faith that in the future they were going to hold true to their word and supply amazing cameras and amazing lenses, and they have, you know. So
I think this is definitely the big USP, as I would call it, with regards to Fuji. They've listened to their users. They've also done something which I'm assuming Nikon must do it as well, but I'm assuming the stories I've heard where they've had the professionals, your Zach Harris's and your Dave Hobbies and these sort of guys sitting around the table. I think Alex Lambrex was involved in one particular event as well, sitting around the table, and they were saying, right, what do you want in the camera? I want this.
They do it with us. I mean,
that's on board.
Several times we get asked, we sit around a table and we discuss it, and we talk about a product or a new product and give our input. And the team for Fuji are, you know, as far as I'm concerned, and it's not just saying it because I know them and some of them are my friends, but they're one of the best teams in photography in this industry at the moment. They do want to listen to what you've got to say, and you know, and if you don't like something, tell them, and if they don't, and they'll see if they can change it, you know. And 9 times out of 10, you know, a couple of firmwares down the road or a model of camera down the road, it's done, it's fixed, it's sorted, you know. So
very true. And I think that's
I'm not knocking any of the other, because I've not worked with them for at least 6 years, but it's something that these guys are, and it's the Japanese team behind Fuji are just, you know, they're all over social media, and their passion is second to none to be able to keep the end user happy all the time, including us. Yeah, very true. And of course, the other thing, this Kaizen attitude of regular updates of firmware, even though the model is an old model. I think I got an X Pro 1 upgrade on a firmware literally a couple of months ago. Well, the Pro 2 has been out for what? Over 6 months that I know of, and probably closer to 9 now, isn't it? Which I think is really important, because people can't jump. Professionals can, obviously. People can't jump from model to model just like, you know, just a flick of a thumb, you know. Exactly. They've got their equipment, and they want to have as best as they can from that equipment. And okay, I can't get Acros on my Pro 1. That doesn't bother me. I can do a little bit of jiggery pokery on Lightroom, but you know, those sort of a little bit of faster focus, a little bit of more sort of techie bits that have gone in are so important. And they're doing a great job. The X100 series, for instance, it's why I moved to Fuji. And you have to shoot the X100 almost like it's a film camera to get the best of it. And that's what's amazing about it, because it stops you in your tracks, it puts you back 10 years, and it makes you think, you know. And it's from the X100 to the X100T, and they've started moving forward with that, and they've given a little bit of faster focus, this and the other. Do you know the funny thing? You know, even though I use autofocus and everything else, I do find myself zone focusing sometimes just to enjoy it, you know. So
and I've finished on that last shot of you, sort of a Vivian Mayer look with the young Muslim girl in the window there, which was
very complicated shot, but I got it in the end.
You got it in the end, exactly. So Fuji really is your major stake. What are you doing in terms of your general day-to-day work? Are you still commercial shooting, or are you still event shooting?
Busy all the time, me. Unfortunately, fortunately and unfortunately. So I've got my own business, which is Matthew Hart Photography Limited. So I've got that as a business, which I'll come back to in a second. And I've got Fujiholics as another business. And then obviously I do some bits and pieces for Fuji as well. My ambassador work for Fuji fills up some of my time. I have many projects with those ongoing. And then obviously I do talks and events for Fuji as well. So I'm in shops demonstrating gear, or just doing photography walks. Obviously then you've got the shows, the photography show and everything else, where you're talking for these guys again. I'm on the photography show again this year. That takes up a little bit of, you know, it takes up 4 days. But some of the time to prepare for that, depending on what you're doing, can actually take up a week. I know some people just go there and prep the night before, but it's a little bit more to it than that for me.
Yeah, a little bit more than that. I remember when I saw you at the photography show last year, you were doing the Smug Mug presentation. You looked totally
worn out,
exhausted, worn out. And I was talking.
I think the funny thing is, I think I've overdone it. I'm going to be totally honest. For the last couple of years, it's been said to me I've been doing too much, and I probably am a little bit of a workaholic. But and then I come across sometimes. Part of shooting street photography is I'm a miserable git, but the photography show I'm worn out, and then I can come across really, really bad there. You know, people come up to talk to you and everything else, and you're just concentrating on the next thing.
Exactly right.
It's just tiring. And this year I hope not to, even though I'm there, I hope to try and not be so stressed out this time. But the Fuji takes up some time, and some work with some other companies I do takes up some time. The Fujiholics now, I've been working with the guys as part of a team to try and bring some new and exciting events next year, working with some photographers, and that takes up some of my time. We've actually relaunched and rebranded the site, and Richard's worked his arse off basically this year to rebuild the site for us, and Jim and Rob and Paul Saunders, and have been intricate in that as well. We've had a look at it all, and Rob's helped rebrand. So we've got that off the ground. So that's taken up a lump of time this year, and that's gone a little bit quiet at the moment, coming up to Christmas. But we're hoping to put some events on next year. And my own business, I still shoot. I shoot loads and loads of images for street, and I also teach workshops as well. And I teach events as well, and things that people want me to do. So that's basically what I do. Some of my work, some of my photography work is client-based. Yes, I still shoot for some clients. And that's sort of coming to the end this year and next year, which will free up some time. And that time I'm not going to fill with anything else. I'm actually just going to start. At the end of the day, I don't want to retire, so don't get me wrong on that one. I'm 54 next year, but at 55, I just want to take on a little bit less and start doing a little bit more for me. And I want to start working towards more projects and more books, basically. So, and I've got a project coming up for next year as well. But
lovely. I just while you're on the subject of Fujiholics, let's just go straight to the website. Is it in the process of being revamped? I'm just putting it up.
No, it's done now.
It's done now and up and running.
That's the rebranding.
I just got to say, if anyone's watching the show, I think probably the guys that are watching the show are Fujiholics associated, but when anyone picks it up later on in the YouTube channel, well, if you're a Fuji user or thinking of switching to Fuji or want to try something out Fuji-wise, I don't think you can go wrong with this site. There's just loads here: blog, workshops, forums, video, Fujiholics team, etc., etc. And you've already started posting out some events which have been coming through to me as well, Matt. Which is
the events have been an interesting thing. We're trying to do something a little bit different. We're trying to offer which has gone wrong. I'm going to be honest. We're trying to offer value in the workshops, and I think then when you post a workshop that's half the price of something else in some areas, people don't see it as value. They don't think they're getting any money, but it's the same people doing the same workshops. We got a great wedding workshop with the Northwest's winning wedding photographer, Rob Sanderson, who's actually one of our team next year, which should be really, really good. And Warren Miller, his one's nearly full actually. His live music workshop. This is actually in a venue with a live band, so they actually get to shoot the band, and the whole thing's laid on for them. And that's what we're trying to do, something a little bit different.
Yeah, and you're right what you say about pricing, because sometimes you say, well, we've got to bear in mind the way people want to price things and pay for things.
Yeah.
Do you go cheap, 50 quid for argument's sake, and sort of run the risk of it not looking professionally enough at that price? Or do you try and whack up the price and try and sell something for 550 quid and run the risk of saying, oh, I can't afford that?
Funny you should say that. We put the Venice. Well, this has just made me laugh. So I actually looked around to see how to price the Venice workshop Paul and I are doing. So you've got Paul Saunders and myself in Venice for 3 days, I think it is. And I thought, well, what's not any of the people I know in the UK. I just wanted to have a look around the internet and see, well, what other people are doing it for. And most of the prices were £1,500 plus. And then I thought, okay, so what's the breakdown on that? What are they charging for their time? So I looked at it and I thought, well, if people get it themselves out there, and a flight's £30 because I've got it on EasyJet myself, so it's a £35 flight there, £35 flight back, and I've got a hotel for the week for 400 quid. I thought, right, okay then, so let's just do the workshop. Paul and Mai's time for 4 days. I think it's like £499. I think it is. The first comment on Twitter was, "That's really expensive," and I thought, oh my God, it's like £1,000 cheaper than everybody else. You can't
win, can you? No. Just cannot win. You cannot win. No. And then you hear the horror stories where people have paid £600 for 3-day workshop in a local city to me, and half the time's been wasted on advertising websites and certain little plugins which they do. So
I think, and not knocking any of my friends and all the people I know in the industry, because I think they do a fantastic job. There's some absolutely amazing photographers out there, and there's some amazing trainers, and I think we know most of them. I think the unfortunate thing is now there's some people creeping into the industry that just want to have a go at it. And I get people coming on my workshops now and saying, oh, I'm glad I've come on your workshop, I've learned so much, this, that and the other, and I wish I hadn't gone on blah blah blah, because it's cost me a load of money, it's a waste of my time. And it's all I'll say is it's a shame, but it's a shame they don't come on ours in the first place as well.
This is it.
When they come on mine, I always say, oh, now if you've enjoyed this one, Kevin Mullins does a good one, or some other street photographers. I'll always give a plug to someone I think offers really, really good value for money. David Gibson in London, for instance, street photographer, amazing. Part of the Impact group. He's amazing, and he doesn't do many a year. But these people should book on some of this stuff because it's really, really good.
Yeah.
Just talking about workshops, that's quite funny. Before I did my first workshop, I've never done a workshop in my life,
right?
And I honestly wasn't going to teach any, and I started doing all this when I was 50 odd, and I didn't honestly think there would be value in a workshop. I'm self-taught. I've taught everything myself, and I thought, if you find out by making mistakes, you get on and you learn. What I didn't realize was if I did a lot more workshops when I was younger, I could have actually got to the point I am now quicker, because you learn faster. And even if you take away 1 or 2 things on a workshop, then you take that away and you put it into your photography and you move on, and it saves you a year of learning. So and my first ever workshop I did, there was, I think it's 4 or 5 teachers and 2 university lecturers on it, and in that day alone, I learn every single time I do a workshop, and I want to make it better and better and better and make it for exactly how people want it. I don't charge a lot for my workshops, and I get enjoyment out of my workshops, so they're actually for people to come and enjoy. So
pricing is very, very, very important. I speak to a lot of people out in America, and they say, oh, you can charge $200, $500, $600. And it's something, I think it's quite something unique about the British photographer hobbyist. They really do look at cost and value for money before they sort of dive in. It's all right for the Americans, excuse me. It's all right for the Americans who want to go on a holiday and taking a 2 or 3 day break in Paris, for argument's sake, and sort of double up on their time there. But they're spending thousands of dollars on these sort of workshops, and because at the end of the day, you've got to ask, are they getting value for money? But that's a different aspect. So you talked about Fujiholics there. This is going to sound as though there's quite a lot of your time's being taken up with Fujiholics. What other plans have you got, Matt? Fujiholics Fujiholics is a balance. It's been a balancing act, and I didn't know whether to stop doing my business and just concentrate 100% on Fujiholics, or do both. And I'm going to carry on doing both. My plans are busy. I'm booked up for the whole of 2018 already, and wow. I've started booking into 2019. There's some good stuff coming up. One of them, we've got an exhibition in London, but I can't give you details on that yet until it's 100% finalized. Sure. But it's in, and hopefully, if it comes off, it's an absolutely amazing space in London where there's never been allowed to be an exhibition before, and it's outside in the open air, with some great support and some great photographers for that. And I can't wait for that one. And as soon as I can talk about it, I will. Yeah, get the details up quick.
I will. I've got an exhibition as well next year. I was asked the year before you asked, and asked again this year, to have my first ever exhibition, and I'm gonna do it. So that's in Hull for the City of Culture, and great. It's from Alan Raw for Hull City of Culture, which is the Hip Gallery, which I'll give you the details at the end. But so I'm gonna have opening weekend is the beginning of October, so I'm gonna have an exhibition of all my window work for that exhibition in the gallery.
That's going to be interesting work then. And what I'm really pleased to hear is you're not only booked up for next year, 2017, you're booked for 2018. These are workshops I'm taking.
There's all sorts of things, yeah. Workshops and other work, yeah. Galleries and private events, etc.
Yeah. Okay. We're just getting a little bit of difficulty with the signal as we speak, which are you still there, Matt?
Yeah, I'm still here, yeah. Paul's disappeared.
I just wanted to say to everyone, this is the last Christmas from me. My first show. Can't remember I have. So. Just to say, Matt, once again, it's so well you on the line. It's been a joy to have you on. I love what you spoke about in one of the other cities that you're doing in.
You're back now. I can hear you now.
Oh, you're back now. I was watching your face there. I thought he's not listening. He's miles away.
I was listening to you ping pong like Robbie the Robot. I was actually quite enjoying it.
I was just wondering whether you might have just fallen asleep.
I was actually not off. I was actually thinking of filling it in, but I thought, nah, sod it.
No, don't fill it in. I'm here.
People might be able to hear you perfectly, and then I'll look stupid filling in the gap.
Yeah, exactly. That did happen with me once. A guy out in America, I just lost signal, and he sat there for 2 minutes, bless him. A.D. Wheeler, fantastic guy. And he said, well, this is A.D. Wheeler, and I think I better do a sign off for Paul. And he just rabbit on finish. I had to thank him for that. Anyway, thanks very much indeed, Matt. Really appreciate it. You have a great Christmas, and I hope Fuji sends you something really special in that big white bag that you normally carry around. And
all the Fuji cameras all over the world actually this Christmas.
Yeah, exactly right, yeah. It's just for me to say, if you're going out shooting this weekend, I'll tell you what, leave your camera bag at home, but please, please, please take your camera. All the best to you. Bye for now.